Hey, it's Ethan here at eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hollywood Rack's Destination E Hitch Bike Rack and how it fits on our 2022 Nissan Frontier. The Destination is a 2-bike platform style bike rack capable of supporting 2 bikes, in this case up to 70 pounds. It's going to hold on to our bike primarily by the frame here with these rotated padded clamps, as well as 1 strap down here on the back tire and 2 on the front. So it's got a really secure hold, but it does make frame contact. So if you did want to mix and match and use this with your carbon frame bikes, we'd recommend against it. Or if you just have a nice paint job, because either way it could damage the frame while you're driving. But this rack is specifically designed with e-bikes in mind. It has a ramp that does not integrate onto the rack, but it does come with the whole system to help you load and unload those heavier bikes. So let's check out the rack and how it works. First thing we're going to show off is the super aggressive tilt that this rack offers. So to tilt the rack away, we're going to need to loosen up this gray hand knob here at the bottom of the mast. Push that forward, and now from here I can grab onto the back of the center mast, especially if I have 2 really heavy bikes on here. But the rack does a lot of work for you, which is nice. You see it stops here in the middle, continues to stop, and slowly guides its way down to that almost 90-degree tilt. But unfortunately, it's still not quite enough for us to get full tailgate access. It does open up quite a ways, but will eventually make contact right around there to the very bottom of the rack. But now if you do have a tonneau cover on your bed, it would be a great time to reach in and get things that you might need. Otherwise, if you don't have a tonneau cover, there's tons of room back here now. I can reach to the back middle of the bed, get things out that I would need in that way. To fold the rack up, you can do it from the front or the back, depending on how much leverage you need. But we'll need to make sure that that gray lever lines itself back up with that notch. Tighten that back down, and now we can work on getting the bike removed. Now is when the ramp would come in, especially if you have some heavier bikes loaded up, but it's also unfortunately where our first drawback of this rack comes in. So as you can see, we don't have a ton of space over here, and I can only put this on the back tire for this tray, because there is only a notch on one of either end. So from here I would have to try to get my bike out against the garage, which is just not going to work. But the ramp will help you if you have enough space, which is something you're going to want to keep in mind if you're pulling up to parking lots or anywhere where there might be issues with that. It does telescope, which will help you raise or lower the angle depending on how much help you need or how much space you have. But like I said, in the case of our setup right here, I don't have enough room to get this bike off because I can only put it at the back end, so I'm not actually going to use it. Just kind of wanted to explain the ramp and how it works. In our case, to remove the bike, I'm first just going to start by removing these straps. I'll start with this front one. As you can see, each of the straps do have a rubber pad on there to protect your tire a little bit. And now we'll move on to the second one on the front tire. I like to just sort of tuck them underneath. And for the last one, same thing. We'll just press this gray button, pull the strap through, and tuck it underneath, which is especially useful if you do want to run it along and use the ramp. But from here, I will hold onto the frame of my bike, point out that on this knob to loosen this up, we do have a lock core. So if you want to lock that up, it won't actually spin, you won't be able to loosen the jaws, and you won't be able to remove the bike from the rack. But in our case, that's what I'll do now. Loosen this knob up until the jaws release over the frame. Push that out and away. From here, if you did have the ramp installed, you could roll your bike one way to get it down. But we don't have a super heavy bike. I'm just going to lift mine up and off. As the trays come, they're able to support a tire width of 4.5 inches. And because of the shape overall of the rack, how it angles down on either side, it can accommodate a wheelbase of up to 50 inches. But from here, I'm going to condense things a little bit more by getting the center mast folded down. First thing I need to do is pull these rubber straps off of the back here to release these levers, one on either side, and then I'll throw these. And now I can lower the center mast down, get that cradle out of the way, and we can tighten things back up using these levers again. Just fold them up, get the strap around, and tighten back down onto those knobs. Same thing on the other side. Lever down, get the strap tightened up, and now I'll get a couple measurements to see how much space we're adding on. So from the bumper, to the furthest point back of the rack. It's going to come in at, let's see here, just about 39 and a half inches. So with that center mass down, we definitely add a bit of distance onto an already pretty big rack and a pretty long car. As far as ground clearance, because it does angle down, like I mentioned, I'm actually going to measure that from the side here. That's going to come in at about 22 inches. So with the overall rise in the shank and how high the Frontier sits, that's not going to be an issue as far as ground clearance goes, going up hills or over curbs and bottoming out. But if we want to, we can actually save a little bit of that space by folding the rack up towards the bed. We're first going to remove this clip here on the side, and then we will pull this pin out of the other side. We'll just set that on the bed for now. And we'll step back here, and I can fold the whole thing up, just like that. And then I'll come back down, find where these holes line up on our shank here. It's right here. Might have to wiggle the rack back and forth to slide that through all the way. Once it's in, we'll replace the pin and the clip, and I'll get that new measurement to see how much space we've saved. So now from the bumper to the furthest point back, we're only going to be sticking out from here probably about 14 inches. So we do cut down our space total about in half. It doesn't sit super close. The closest point here is going to come in probably at about 4.5 inches. It's got a little bit of back and forth, but it doesn't come close enough that I'm going to be worried about it making contact with the tailgate. We can take a look at what the rack is going to cover up on the back of our tailgate now, because it is kind of a bulky setup. Overall, our license plate is in the middle, and it's going to be really heavily obstructed total. There's going to be a tough few angles where you can see it from, but again, it's going to be pretty heavily blocked. Our backup camera is right here in the middle, so we do kind of have this window right here where you might be able to see a little bit, and from the sides, but again, it's right in the middle, as is the rack, so that's going to be really heavily obstructed as well. It doesn't quite come wide enough that it's going to interfere with our taillights though. Our center mast again is really tall, and it will stick over the top of our tailgate just a little bit. You might be able to just barely see it out of your rear view window, but that's not going to be a huge issue. The rack uses a 2-inch shank that fits into our 2-inch hitch receiver. It's held in place by this pin and the lock on the end that's going to be key to those mast locks we talked about earlier. It's got this welded collar on it so that you line it up only once and you fit that pin right in, which activates this anti-rattle handle here in the back. All we need to do is tighten that up to take any shake and play out of the rack. It's always a good idea just to leave this horizontal or up if you can, just so we're not cutting down on that ground clearance. Overall, the Hollywood Rack's Destination E is a solid, albeit a little bit bulky way to get heavier bikes where you need them to go. I like the ramp's design itself. I don't love the fact that you have to remember to bring it, or the fact that you can only put it on one of either side of the cradles. So if you do like the ramp as a means to get heavier bikes loaded and unloaded, you can check out something like the Yakima on-ramp. It has an integrated ramp that stores on the rack so you don't have to remember to bring it, and it goes on all 4 of your trays. But it is a little bit thinner as far as tire width goes, so it does work a little bit more clunkily, but it does store under the rack, so it's kind of a trade-off in that case. Overall though, if you do want a really rugged and well-built design that does tilt away super aggressively, the Hollywood Rack's Destination E is still a really solid choice. This again was just a quick look at how it fits on our 2022 Nissan Frontier.
Here on our test course, we'll start by going through the Solemn. This is going to show us the side-to-side action, which simulates turning corners and evasive maneuvers. Then we get to the alternating speed bumps. We'll see the twisting action. This will simulate hitting a curb or pothole or driving on uneven pavement. Then we'll go over the full speed bumps, and we can see the up and down action. This will be like driving in and out of a parking lot, garage, or a driveway.